People will always show you who they truly are. They reveal their true nature, sometimes in the very first moments that we meet them in, but we still miss it. We must believe them when they show us who they are. Deep down, you know the truth. You always knew. Trust your gut instinct because your body doesn't lie. Unspoken truths are things that may be really bothersome to people, so they refuse to ever speak about them. They are expressed or understood without being directly stated. The unspoken truth is often felt rather than heard. In the first part of the unspoken truth about the Watts family, we talked about the family's behavior, mostly Cindy's, and what their intentions seemed to be from the very beginning. Their first few attempts to villainize Shanann Watts had failed miserably. People were not willing to view Shanann as a terrible, controlling wife and mother based off of the opinion of a spiteful mother-in-law. We all know that there's a large number of mother-in-laws who have insignificant, petty issues with their daughter-in-laws, and her biased opinion could be unfair or dishonest. Most of us wondered what Cindy's point was when talking this way about Shanann. Was she trying to say that Shanann had caused her own death and the death of her precious children, or that her son was forced to commit these crimes? Surely she wasn't excusing this behavior, excusing why her son had become a family annihilator, and blaming Shanann for what had happened. This is the definition of victim blaming. Victim blaming is when the victim of a crime is held entirely or partially at fault for the harm that befell them. Most people recognized what the Watts family were doing and spoke out against it, but they still pushed forward with trying to change the narrative and ruin Shanann's reputation. Even with the backlash that they had faced, they still set out on a mission to spread their hate for a woman that their son had murdered. Their hatred was so strong that it could not be contained. They had to release it out into the world. We've all heard the stories that were told by Cindy and Jamie to make Shanann look bad and to paint a very specific picture of what they wanted Shanann to look like. They took Shanann's A-type personality traits, exaggerated them, and used them to make everyone else see her in the way that they saw her. These stories that were told were either stretching the truth or completely false. I'll give you an example in a story that we have all heard. Remember the story about how the big bad Shanann had bought the Power Ranger costume for the birthday party, and they had forgotten the helmets back at home? They said Shanann was so controlling and demanded that Chris drive all the way back to get them. Cindy claimed that they begged him to stay and not to worry about it, but he made that long drive back anyway because the awful mean Shanann told him to. What if I told you that that is not what happened at all? Shanann didn't demand that he make that long drive after those helmets. She never even asked him to. Chris volunteered to do it. He told everyone there that he didn't mind doing it. Maybe he wanted some time to himself that day, who knows? But Shanann did not yell and scream at him and demand that he do it like the original story was told. If this story was distorted in order to make something seem like something that it wasn't, how many other stories that we have heard have been exaggerated or lied about? Actually, just to show that there are more stories that are not true, I'll share one more. The story of Cindy and Ronnie driving all the way to Myrtle Beach just to be able to spend time with Bella and Cece, only to be told by Shanann that she wasn't going to allow them to see the girls. This story was told by Cindy to make it seem like Shanann had basically tricked them just to be spiteful. And of course, this is also not true. The Watts were already at Myrtle Beach. In fact, the whole family was, including Jamie, her husband, and their children. Nikki Kessinger actually mentioned in her interview that Chris told her when him and Shanann got to the beach that day, he went to where his family was staying and there was a note on the door saying, "Son, if you came by, we are down at the beach." The Watts family were already at Myrtle Beach, and this was just a planned family vacation. They didn't drive down there specifically to see Bella and Cece, and Shanann certainly didn't trick them into doing it. Cindy and Jamie seem to have developed the skill of storytelling. The art of storytelling and being able to twist the truth in these stories was another one of their skills that they used to manipulate others and ignite a fire of hatred towards Shanann Watts. Some people may think that the Watts are not very smart because, like their beloved Chris, they seem like they sometimes play dumb. I think it's their way of not being held accountable and not having to take responsibility when they do something wrong. But honestly, I think the Watts are much smarter than most people think. I think that the Watts are clever and very observant people. Observers are good listeners and absorb every little detail like a sponge. They are great judges of character and are scarily accurate. They take note of small things in life and always seem to be one step ahead of everyone else. Being an observer is definitely a special kind of intelligence, and they can be very determined when they set their mind to something. The reason that I think that the Watts family have these qualities is because they quickly perceive the dangers ahead of them and carefully make plans to dodge trouble. They sat back and observed how other people perceived them and seemed to know when they needed to change directions. They knew that in order to maintain a good reputation, they would need others to do their dirty work for them. So Cindy Watts and her daughter Jamie Watts and Jamie's two friends Mel and Kel set out to find and create their henchmen. These ladies would use all of their observant skills to pick out which people they could manipulate into spreading hate and confusion in each story that they told. They used people on social media in order to change the narrative and adopt new theories that would take the heat off of them and change how everyone seemed to perceive their family. The Watts family, including Cindy, Jamie, Mel and Kel, and Ronnie Watts, all used their manipulative skills to build a good reputation and get in the good graces of many people on Facebook and YouTube. They would each befriend different people on social media and get them to use their platforms to express their approval and admiration for the Watts family. They knew that if reputable people spoke highly of them, they could repair the damage that they had done to their own reputation. They essentially used these people to make a better name for themselves. But why? This is not the proper action to take to repair and bounce back from a bad reputation. In order to right a wrong, restore, or rebuild something, you first need to acknowledge your mistakes and take responsibility for them. You offer an apology and then you move on. You can show that you've improved and learned by not making those same mistakes again. Unfortunately, this process seems to be a foreign concept to the Watts family. It comes as no surprise when we see Chris Watts modeling this behavior. No accountability, no responsibility, no apology. Creating their henchmen to repair their reputation wasn't only just about changing the way that people perceived them. They realized that they had a much bigger problem when there were a couple of slip-ups here and there that caused people to question the Watts' true intentions. People started wondering if the Watts had an agenda after Jamie slipped up and told a few people that she was the one who gave Chris the oxy. She admitted that she gave her brother the oxy that he poisoned his wife with. This was concerning, to say the least, because we don't know what Chris's intentions were. The fact that she gave him the oxy was not even the most concerning part of this. The most concerning part is her actions after the fact. If she did not know what Chris had planned to do, the solution is simple. Just let people know, hey, I didn't know what he was going to do with it. He asked me for it, and I gave it to him. There's a few ladies who have said that they were with the Watts when some of these theories were thought up. The plan was to create theories where they could eventually blame someone else for giving Chris the oxy. They created lies to cover up what they knew was the truth. One of these fake theories was that Nicole Atkinson was in the house that night. Once they'd convinced people that she was in the house and caused people to become suspicious of her, they would then say that Nicole Atkinson had gotten the oxy from her work and it was given by her instead of Jamie. They would purposely lie and hurt someone who they knew was completely innocent. Someone who had done nothing wrong and has had a hard enough life as it is. So another unspoken truth about the Watts family is that they have no empathy. They do not have the ability to understand the pain that they cause others. They cannot see the hurt that they've caused because all they can see is their hurt and their pain. Remember, the unspoken truth is felt, but not always spoken. Most of us feel like the Watts family did not care for Shanann Watts. They didn't care for her when she was living, and they still do not care for her even in death. Most would even say they hated her. Even if the Watts have never said it, we can all feel it. One more unspoken truth that's important is that the Watts have went to great lengths to cover up the things in this case that they were involved in. If law enforcement hasn't questioned their involvement, then they should. Chris Watts is gone. He's never getting out of prison. They no longer need to protect Chris. They no longer need to be scared for Chris. So, who are they protecting now?